Hello, welcome back to Out of That Line podcast, and we have another album review for you this week, and it is, of course, going to be Mitski, and Nothing's About to Happen to Me. Mitski is this the third time, Alex? Oh, sorry, folks. I'm here, as always, with my co-host, Alex. Alex, how you doing this week?
I was going to say, what an ignominious introduction to the episode. I had it all loaded up. You were like, nothing's about to happen to me. I'm like, I'll tell you what's about to happen to you, Jeff. We're about to rock this episode. Doing great. And yes, to answer your question, this is Mitski joins the Hat Trick Club on the podcast.
Okay, I thought so. So, and what I've always liked about Mitski is basically just how interesting the work is. I think that's the idea, is like it's emotion first, and then all sorts of musical talent behind it, I think, is kind of the name of the game with Mitski. At least my experience with it. I think we've done we did Laurel Hell, and what was the other album we did?
The Land is Inhospitable, and So Are We.
Yes. So we did both those. I remember Laurel Hell being much more of a, I guess, bigger album, I guess, so to speak, as far as like the production quality, things like that. I think a lot more similar to Nothing's About to Happen to Me, this album we're going to talk about this week. So I know you had some experience with Mitski like before we started talking about it on the podcast. So kind of where do you feel like this fits in? Is this comparable to you to any of the recent work, or previous work, I should say?
Yeah, I'm actually the opposite of you. I think this has more to do. I'm just going to call it The Land, just to be short. Yeah. This had much more in common for me with The Land is Inhospitable than Laurel Hell. Laurel Hell to me felt like it was a little more on a shoegazy kind of scale. And it felt like with The Land is Inhospitable, the sound was kind of opening up, becoming a little more rock forward. And then to me, the most interesting part is it spawns this mega viral hit, My Love Is Mine. Mm-hmm. My Love Is Mine, All Mine. And out of that, it's just like Mitski's the name on a lot of people's lips. So she can do two things with that, right? Steer into that and capitalize on that and make this like big bombastic attempt to like rise to the level of virality that song had, or continue the sound that you were on and yet make it somehow like more interior. And you do that through the themes. This is contained to this one dusty old house, the themes of interiority and longing and loneliness. It's a self-imposed kind of theme because she's notoriously dubious of her own fame. Mm-hmm. And not that she doesn't like love her fans, but she would say, I don't know them and they don't know me. So when they reach out and like, I love you, Mitski, your music saved me. She's like, I don't know you. You don't know me. And it's not in a combative way. It's in a way that I think keeps her connected to her artistry. She's like, this makes sense. This is a piece of me. This is what I'm willing to share. You're never going to know me beyond this. I'm not a big interview person. Mm-hmm. I can't hang out with everyone one-on-one. So it felt kind of natural for her to take this one deeper inside of Mitski's mind, the mindset of Mitski.
And I think overall, I think there is a huge value for artists being, self-aware and at least self-reflective, I should say, whether they reach awareness or not, at least, as long as they're reflective. I feel like having that perspective generally leads you to a much more honest piece of art, whether it's, music or any other type of art you want to talk about. I do think Mitski's probably a little bit too hard on herself, with some of the things that she says about herself, some of the things on this record. But it's also, I think there is an innate confidence in who she is that maybe like the fame part of it, she doesn't really understand or is comfortable with, because she is very self-aware that she doesn't feel that different than any one person. So she's like, why am I in this? I don't think it's so much that she's like, I don't deserve to be here, but I think it's just, you don't need to like worship me like this. I don't deserve to be that. And I think when somebody has that attitude, as much as you might respect their work and think that they should embrace that and embody that because they do deserve to reach that level of stardom that they kind of seem to refuse to take, you also have to have the respect for them to not take that, to stay in the lane they want to stay in, grow within that. But I think, Mitski reminds me in that way a lot of Sturgill Simpson. We did the album recently of the Mutiny After Midnight. It's certainly not like the music in being stylistically similar or anything like that, but as far as just the refusal to try to jump on a trend, with her super viral My Love Mine Oh Mine, with that super viral hit, she could have just made an album full of that and it probably would have done gangbusters, but how would it have made her feel artistically and creatively? And I think that's a hard line she's not willing to cross. Is she's like, if it happens to be extremely popular and sells 50 billion records, that's great, but it's going to be because it's something I wanted to make and not because of something I felt like I should be making, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense. And I think that she's absolutely steering into different artistic instincts here, particularly with the sound. I mean, you have like Celtic folk sounds in
Yeah.
some of these songs. Most of them still can like reach this big rock climax because here's the thing, Mitzi's going to make you work for it just a little bit, just a little bit. And it's not like, I don't think she's sitting there intentionally being like, I want to reward patience. I don't think it's a conscious move. I think it's just something that happens. You have to let these songs build because you get something like Where's My Phone? And I immediately am like, okay, I shouldn't be at this point because we're 8 albums in, but I'm a little dubious. Like, you're kind of always wondering when your heroes might whiff. And you go, Where's my phone? Okay, interesting. And then you listen to it and it's literally, Where's my phone? And you're like, huh. And you have to go on the ride with the song because the further it goes, you can take a cynical look at it and be like, why'd you singing about a cell phone? Bleh. Which, A, it's part of the tableau of being contained to this cottage, which itself begets the whole Celtic aesthetic or Celtic aesthetic. But that's your connection to the outside world at that point is the phone. And I think no matter how happy you are to be isolated, if you know it's out there and you know you can access it, that's kind of like Where's My Phone becomes less like some Zoomer sitting there being like, where's my phone? To like, where's my lifeline? If I do want to check in, where the fuck is it? So if you have to stick with her to get to that point. Because I know a lot of people when I would like start playing Where's My Phone, they like, certain people who shall not be named thought it was a very dumb idea. And then it just kept rolling and it builds and by the end of it, it's just this like giant choir and it also rocks. So yes, to like loop back around to the beginning of what you had said, it's the pursuit of pure artistry and she's not up her own ass. I think it's what makes sense to her and it's what comes to her. And that's always what she's going to do. I don't think it's the same thing as Frank Zappa. He could have made the best pop music ever. He could have pumped that out like a factory and he didn't do it specifically because of that. And I think Mitski's got the same thing going on.
Yeah, and I think, 8 albums in, I think you're kind of right to start thinking about, okay, is there, now that they found plenty of success, is there still that same motivation, or is there still those friction points in their lives that are going to, create this music that you've kind of fallen in love with and been attached to? Or is it going to be to a point now where they've got different problems that maybe you don't relate to anymore? So it might mean just as much to them, but they kind of lose the audience that got them there. So that's always a worry, with bands as they kind of move along in their careers. I think, and I say bands, but, Mitski obviously solo probably has many people that play consistently with her, but I feel like all of these ideas are her too. And when you think about how complicated it has to be to write songs in this kind of like this like Celtic folky kind of style and also have these like shoegazy kind of really heavy moments, and have your classic Mitski, like kind of operatic, very, just very poetic kind of lyrical style and sung in a very operatic way over these really building strings and then these very distorted guitars. It takes a lot to make that much noise work together. And that's where that kind of like musical prodigy, like musical genius side of her comes out, is because she's able to make all that stuff work. The more advanced you are, that's why we look at artists, like Bob Dylan differently than somebody like a Bruce Springsteen. Is, lyrically, Bob Dylan is looked at as the best ever. But musically, it's like, yeah, it's good because you just like that song so much. But you think about the compositions that someone like Springsteen could make. Now I know there was a lot of input from the E Street Band on how to put that stuff all together, but I'm just kind of getting to making that much noise work together and make it cohesive and make the song go somewhere and keep it interesting with all those changes going on. That's what separates Mitski, I think, from the rest of this kind of indie rock, indie singer songwriter kind of pack. I think is her ability to do that and have those songs build to the point they do. Like that's one of my favorite things in music is songs that build like that. And Mitski just crushes it every time. She might do it differently, might be into strings and chorus and things like that. It might be into crazy distorted guitars, but she can do it either way and they work every time.
I think that and the ability to engage all the senses, which I know sounds like a trite kind of hipster douchebag thing, but it's the truth. I mean, like in the first song, In a Lake, talking about, the scent of soap that like reminds you. Yeah. I'd never live in a small town. I've made too many mistakes. For where you got to write your book early or it gets written up in your place, where you never get away from your first love. It's like one brand of soap sold in town because anyone you can get close to smells like your first time around. So it's like so it's obvious to be like, whoa, she's talking about the scent of soap, ergo invoking the sense of smell. Like, I don't mean to like make it so obvious, but it contributes to the whole where it is. It's the sight, the feeling of being in a lake, describing what it would feel like to just float there, not just physically, but the relief you feel and the happiness you feel and this sense of escapism. And this whole album is about escaping not to the wilderness, but like within, and that there's good and bad to that, that there's kind of madness and isolation to it. There's also a lot of room to think. So like creating these really, really big themes that are played out with a lot of texture and a lot of dimension and a lot of authenticity across all five of your senses. That is very rare. That is a great trick. And, we talk about when do your idols whiff, they will inevitably whiff kind of thing. Nobody is unimpeachable, no matter how good I think she is, no matter how much has not missed for me up to this point. It's always a possibility, but you can't necessarily live in fear of that, specifically because she's so good at pivoting her sound and with that pivoting the stuff that she's talking about. Something like Bury Me at Makeout Creek is very different from Laurel Hell, is very different from this. They really do feel like fleshed out concepts, or these albums feel like fleshed out concepts united around a theme, driving a different sound forward. Like, something like Laurel Hell has more to do with like Cocteau Twins, who I fucking love. Way more to do with like Cocteau Twins or Beach House or something like that. Not quite as dreamy, but in the arena, versus this, which I think speaks a little more to that Taylor Swift folklore crowd. They wouldn't have as hard a time grafting themselves onto this one. It's probably more artistic integrity than they're used to, but they might be able to make it happen. It's just, she does a really, really great job of building a world and hooking you into it.
Yeah, and I mean Taylor Swift wishes she could write a lyric like some days you just go the long way to stay off of memory lane, right after a lyric about taking walks of shame.
Yeah.
So you go from this like very trite kind of like tossed off thing about walks of shame and like, haha, that's funny. And then you think a little deeper. Sometimes you go the long way to stay off of memory lane. There's other memories, not just walks of shame. And maybe the walks of shame isn't necessarily how you're thinking of it either. Maybe there's other things that you made a mistake with somebody and everybody knew in the small town. So whatever walk you took was a walk of shame. So I think there are so many layers to what Mitski's able to pull out. And as far as, we keep referencing, I feel like we're like manifesting that she's going to come out with a dud at some point, but I think she's a great self-editor, where I think she has an ear where kind of she knows if it's good, or if she's satisfied with it, then it's good enough for that people are going to like it. I think she might be very critical of that. So she's not just trying to pump stuff out however quickly she can. She's just probably very good at being inspired. I think that's probably a talent in itself, is being able to pull that inspiration and consistently over 8 albums. I feel like everybody that's a Mitski fan probably has a different favorite Mitski album. And I think that shows the strength of the kind of songwriting that she does. Now, are all of them as good as the others, or are there some that are clearly going to be looked at as her classics? Probably. But it's the same thing with Springsteen. Like, I love the song Radio Nowhere. Do I think that stacks up to Jungle Land and Born to Run? Probably not. But it's like, to me, it's great. And I feel like when you're into Mitski, she's one of those artists that you can make a connection like that with. Like, I remember Wife of the Pod listening to the song Nobody and just constantly listening to that song. And it was so catchy. Like, it's such a great pop song. And then you listen to this album and there's really nothing like that. And it's really fantastic that she can just kind of dip her toe in so many different things, but sound like she's a master at it.
And the audacity for the two singles that you released to be Where's My Phone and I'll Change for You. So Where's My Phone, which is this like kind of chaotic, stressed out song that builds, into I'll Change for You, which is this like dark, depressing bossa nova type song where it kind of like sinks into the feeling. Hitting a lot of different highs and lows and extremes throughout this whole album. And I think experimenting with new sounds and building on some of the stuff that started to come through in The Land Is Inhospitable. This kind of takes it in a more folky indie direction. Like, when it's gotta rock, it's gotta rock. When the chips are down, it's gonna rock. But when there are these moments to kind of take a sentiment and walk it out and kind of like pull back from the bombast a little bit, they're so simple, anyone could relate to them. I look specifically like I'll Change for You. This song really grew on me. At first I was like, it's not as strong as like Where's My Phone to me. But then you really get down to the lyrics and they're so simple and they're so evocative. Bars, such magic places. You can be with other people without having anyone at all. But now they say they're closing, so I'm loitering outside, watching all the cars passing by like a kid waiting for my ride. Bam, bam, bam. You've seen it. You've experienced it. Yes, it's a potentially trite observation to be like, you can be alone in a crowded room. Like, it's not the first time someone's had that thought. But the sarcasm of like, oh, it's a magic place where I can go get fucking drunk and be left alone. And it's not like a happy, hopeful motif to then be like, yep, and now they're closing and I'm just hanging out and I have nowhere to go and nothing to do. There's a deep hopelessness to a really, really beautiful song that for once is wallowing in these feelings and unafraid to feel them. Like, that's been my major criticism of that Hayley Williams Divorce album, or Casey Musgrave's Starcrossed. She's got a new album coming out soon, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
But those albums to me, I'm like, they're just like saturated in their own self-pity. And like, I don't doubt that these divorces were fucking awful, but it didn't necessarily make very listenable music, because I think getting all of that material out took precedent over like building a very interesting song musically. And it feels like, and I don't know this, but it feels like, yeah, Mitski starts with an emotion, puts it to music, comes up with the words that she hears. Whatever her process is, you get a sense that there is a process and that these things are like very carefully built from a very authentic place.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, this is an album that commits that sin, air quotes, of wallowing in the emotion, but it's so genuine and it's so purposeful that it's hard not to love it, and to love it for how like heartbreakingly beautiful it can be.
And I think it's, if you can do it well enough, it will work, because while that feeling has been expressed a million times before, it's going to be felt a million times again. So I think if you can make that sort of thing work, like if you can have a lyric, because it's like the second verse of that song, there is nothing complicated about that. Any high school poetry class student could probably come up with something like that. But when you are able to pair it with, again, the music and having it just, that's the thing, is like, no matter what the background of the lyrics are throughout this album, the music always seemed to fit that, kind of, especially with this song. And I've struggled sometimes with Mitski's like slower stuff in the past. I've struggled a little bit with that, because I think I just always tend to struggle with music that doesn't build and really go anywhere. For some reason, like on this album, maybe it was more subtle, the builds, and I just didn't really feel them as they were going, but I never felt at a point on this album where it really dragged at all. Where a song that she'd done previously, like I'll Change for You, maybe I wouldn't be that into it previously. I feel like on this album, because I got so many varied musical styles, that it worked. Like, probably because there wasn't 6 songs like this one on the album, I didn't really feel at all that it was dragging, that it was just like a welcome addition to the rest of them.
Yeah, that's again. I think a lot of that has to do with Mitski rewards buy-in. Her music, just like by its nature, rewards total buy-in, patience, sitting with it, letting it build, letting it breathe, all the hipster stuff that applies. I think that on an album like this specifically, you are kind of pinballing through different themes. It's not a concept album, so it doesn't necessarily follow a clean narrative so much as it's kind of exploring these different vignettes that kind of take place in this metaphorical but also literal haunted house. While again not making a concept album out of that, but like it's you get a song like Cats, which I really enjoy, and I enjoy it because of its simplicity and what it adds to that concept of the loneliness, like almost literally the crazy cat lady, but also you could leave me, but hey, you know what? At least I'll have my cats. And that's what she ends up saying about it too, is it's like it's a song about a complicated relationship and someone who might have their foot out the door, but it's also just about how much I love the 2 cats I adopted and that they can be a source of strength for me. So the fact that like she David Byrne very literally is like, it's about my cats and how much I love them, but it is also very literally about this relationship, which seems to be like beyond fraying. And it can be both, and it's not silly. And there's something cute that unites it, where it's like, I love the very end. So we're talking about like, if you leave, at least our 2 cats will sleep with me tonight. And then the last part, maybe tomorrow night the cats will be nowhere in sight, but I'll be glad to know they're out following their heart's delight. And you can take a lot of things out of that too, like out of something very simple like that, that she's genuinely happy for these companions for herself. But I also think there's an element of like the guy is also a cat. You know what I mean? And like, hey, if you're out doing your thing, I am genuinely happy for you. I'm sorrowful for what this could mean for the relationship, but I'll live and you'll live.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the kind of stuff where I think she proves that she's a complicated person. The relationship with fame and her fans and her self-image and the way that she sees relationship dynamics, it's not as cut and dried as like, oh, Taylor Swift broke up with Travis Kelce, revenge album incoming, and you know what you're going to get. And it's just going to be, you know, catharsis vomited all over 12 variants of vinyl. With this, it's contained, it's layered, it's complex. I think, therefore, it makes it kind of a difficult listen to the uninitiated. I think Mitski really is crack for hipsters. Apparently, it's a red flag if a guy loves Mitski. Well, guess what? I love Mitski.
Yeah, it would make sense, I think, because probably both be considered red flags.
You know what I mean? And like, apparently, a guy who likes Claro is a red flag. Well, guess what? I also love Claro.
Yeah, then I can buy that 100%.
I'm a big walking red flag, baby. Doodle doodle doo. But that her music has a very enduring quality for me because it changes a little bit every time. She's always exploring new directions and kind of responding to where she's at in her journey. Living in Nashville, recording this out of a house, like, could be exploding and instead contracts. And I think it's part of the Mitski mystique, and the music is wonderful. This for me was an 8 out of 10.
That was right on the money. The 8 out of 10 for me. I think you were correct in saying that I think there's probably half of this album would be great entry points for somebody that hasn't listened to Mitski before, and probably half of it would they reconsider ever listening again. But I think once you're into Mitski, those then become songs that you love. So it's just, I think she is great at rewarding a loyal listener, somebody that's been with her for a long time, and she's great at giving you moments to sink your teeth into, if even if you haven't been into her. So if you can kind of try to take that perspective, I know you and I both have listened to albums worth of Mitski, so it's probably not the same for us. But if folks out there have not ever listened to Mitski before and you listen to this album, like tell us which songs you felt like were the ones that really grabbed you, and tell us which songs you felt like were ones would, if you listened to them first, that you probably wouldn't have listened to another one. It'd be interesting to find that out from somebody if they haven't listened to her at all, which is probably plenty of people that haven't. It's funny how people that know about her love her, and then there's just this whole swath of people you say Mitski and they're like, who? But she's big in her scene. She is the biggest.
Oh, yeah, within her ecosystem, huge, but a hard sell. You gotta just like, I've learned you have to pick your battles with certain people. You get something you're really hyped up on, like, I'll put him on blast. When Red Moon and Venus, Caliucci's came out, I listened to that and I was like, this is sizzling. This is so great. Big, textured, sumptuous, great late night vibes. You can like, I just love that quiet storm kind of vibe to it. Enthusiastically send it to him. He says the worst blow off thing you can say to someone when they share their heart song with you. Well, I can see why you like it. I was going to reach through the phone and give him a tete twister for that one, but I didn't because I'm a G. But it's that's the thing, is you have to pick your battles, and like Mitski is not someone, and it's not because I'm embarrassed for being dunked on, but you want to keep these dialogues going, and if you recommend them something that they're not going to like, it's like, yeah, will they ever take your recommendation again? Pick your battles. Keep these dialogues going. Know what hill to die on, folks, and I'm willing to die on the Mitski hill, but you got to be ready because I came to fight. Came to fight.
Well, there is obviously, folks, you've just listened to this review. Make sure you go back and check the other Mitski reviews we've done. And Alex, where can they find those?
YouTube.com/C/out on that line, folks. We're like the Batman and Joker. We're destined to do this dance forever. It can stop. It can all stop. But we want to get the party started. So don't get confused here. We're doing a lot of different things. All right. Follow along. We're going to stop procrastinating and we are going to start living our best life. You do that. We'll take care of the content. You just have to subscribe to the channel. You have to click the bell so that you get notified when we get new stuff coming out. You got to click the thumbs up to like the video. It helps when you share the video. They have a hype feature. You can do that now. And also comments. Oh my goodness, comments are so important. And we have a field day with them. Our Sturge video came out. Sturgill Simpson, JBS, Johnny Blue Skies to you. Thank you very much. Great episode. Fun episode. A lot of great energy in the comments. Let's build off that momentum. Let's take inspiration from that incredibly enthusiastic core of people and keep it going. Leave comments in this video. Hey, all you Mitski Fox out there, I'm talking to you, okay? I am one of you. I don't know what we call ourselves. I have no clue. You tell me, but I'm with you. So come share your story and come enjoy everything that we have to offer at youtube.com/C/out on that lad.
That was wonderful. Till next time, folks.